I was bent over the counter, trying to get a stubborn register drawer to slide shut, when I heard her voice. "You're going to break it if you keep forcing it like that." I didn't have to turn to know it was her. There was this slight rasp in her tone, like she'd laughed too hard earlier in the day, or maybe smoked for a few years too long and then quit. It made everything she said sound weightier. I straightened up, wiped my hands on my jeans, and glanced toward the doorway. She was leaning against it, the sunlight from outside pooling around her like she'd dragged the whole afternoon in with her. This was the third time she'd come by the shop in as many weeks, always with a just-in-the-area excuse, a book or a coffee cup in hand. She wasn't here for the oil changes or tire rotations. My stepdad owned the place, but she'd been out of his life for years. Still, she came. I never asked why. "Drawer's just old," I said. Tapping the counter like that somehow proved my point. "Everything sticks when it gets worn out." Her eyes caught mine for a beat longer than was necessary. The kind of look that didn't feel like it was about the register anymore. Then she smiled small, but knowing, and walked inside. She smelled faintly of citrus and something warmer underneath, like cedar. Not the cloying perfume my age group drowned themselves in. This was understated, the kind that didn't announce itself but stayed in your head hours later. "I brought you this," she said, setting a paper bag on the counter. Inside was a sandwich from the cafe across the street. My favorite. I'd never told her that. "Thanks," I said, suddenly aware of the grease on my hands. I wiped again, harder. "You didn't have to." "I know." She adjusted the strap of her bag, her nails short, unpainted. "But you don't eat when you're busy."
"Even noticed."
The way she said it, like she'd been keeping track, made my stomach tighten in a way the sandwich couldn't fix. A customer came in just then, and she stepped aside. But she didn't leave. She wandered the small waiting area, trailing her fingers along the edge of the coffee table like she was memorizing the feel of it. When the customer left, she was sitting in one of the cracked vinyl chairs, scrolling her phone, her ankle crossed over her knee. Her hair caught the light, a few strands falling forward as she looked up at me. "You know," she said almost casually, "I miss how you used to look at me." I froze halfway to the counter. She didn't smile when she said it, and there wasn't any teasing in her tone. Just quiet honesty, like it had slipped out without her permission. My mouth opened, then closed again. I didn't even know what the right response was supposed to be. Before I could find it, she stood, smoothed her jacket, and nodded toward the sandwich. "Eat before it gets cold." And then she was gone, the bell over the door giving a small final chime. I stood there for a while, holding the bag, the smell of roasted turkey and rosemary bread mixing with the faint trace of her perfume. That night, I kept replaying her voice in my head, like I missed something, or maybe wanted something. She came in just after closing, pushing the door open with the heel of her hand like she wasn't sure she should be there. The bell gave a tired little ring. I was still sweeping up near the back, the dustpan balanced on the counter. "We're closed," I called, but softer than usual. "I know," she said. "I just needed a favor." She stepped inside, closing the door behind her. Her hair was damp, a fine mist clinging to her jacket like she'd walked here in the drizzle. Something about seeing her not put together, a little undone, almost hurried, made her feel less like an untouchable story from my stepdad's past and more like just a woman standing there, looking for help. "What's wrong?" I asked. She set a cardboard box on the counter. "It's making this awful sound. I thought you'd know what to do." It was a space heater, old, dented, the kind you'd find shoved in a closet and forgotten. I plugged it in, and sure enough, it rattled like it was chewing gravel. "Yeah, I can fix it," I said. "Might take a few minutes." She nodded, then wandered to the far corner of the shop. She didn't sit this time, just ran her fingers over the edge of the tool shelf, picking at a flake of rust. When I glanced up, she was watching me work. Not in a way that made me self-conscious, more like she was somewhere else entirely, and I just happened to be in the frame. Her hands caught my attention first, not delicate but capable. The kind of hands that knew how to open jars, fold laundry fast, and drive stick without stalling. A faint scar curved along the base of her thumb. I wanted to ask about it, but I didn't. "You look tired," I said instead, surprising myself. She gave a short laugh, but it didn't reach her eyes. "I've been tired for years." I tightened a screw, the metal groaning in protest. "Work. Life." Her voice was quiet, and something about the way she said it made me stop. She'd gone still, her gaze fixed on the floor like she was trying to hide in plain sight. I wanted to say something that would make her lift her head, but the words felt too big in my throat. The heater sputtered back to life, humming low and steady. "There," I said. She stepped closer, close enough that I caught the faint smell of her shampoo. She crouched a little to feel the heat spilling from the front, her hair brushing forward. A strand caught on the edge of her lip. She didn't seem to notice. "You're good at fixing things," she said, still looking at the heater. I almost told her that not everything could be fixed, but I didn't. She looked at me like she wanted to say something, but didn't, and that silence felt louder than words. The rain had started before I locked up, thin at first, then turning heavy enough to blur the streetlights into soft, melting halos. I didn't expect anyone to knock after hours, but there she was, hair damp, jacket clinging at the shoulders, holding 2 steaming paper cups. "I thought you might still be here," she said, lifting one cup slightly. "It's too cold to be working this late." I let her in. The smell of wet pavement and coffee followed her. The shop felt smaller with the door shut behind us, the sound of the rain pressing in from all sides. We sat on overturned milk crates near the workbench, elbows close enough that if I shifted just a little, we'd touch. She handed me 1 cup. My fingers brushed hers. She didn't pull back. "Long day?" I asked. She laughed under her breath. "Every day's long lately." She stared into her coffee like there might be an answer in it. "It's complicated." I wanted to ask what she meant, but her voice had a way of making me afraid of the truth. So I took a sip instead, letting the heat roll down my throat. The rain deepened, wind rattling the thin glass of the front windows. Somewhere in the distance, a car horn blared, then faded. The whole world outside felt far away. "Do you ever think about starting over?" she asked suddenly. Her eyes were on me now, not curious but searching. "Sometimes," I said. "More lately." She gave a small nod, like she'd expected that. Then she leaned forward, elbows on her knees, close enough that I could see the faint crease between her brows. She looked tired in a way I hadn't noticed before, not just from lack of sleep, but from carrying something heavy for too long. I wanted to reach for her to close the gap. Before I could, her phone buzzed in her jacket pocket. She glanced at the screen, and whatever softness had been in her expression tightened. The light from the display reflected briefly in her eyes. "You can answer it," I said. "It's no one," she replied quickly, slipping the phone back without unlocking it, but her shoulders stayed tense. We sat like that for another minute, neither of us drinking our coffee. The heater in the corner clicked on, filling the silence with its steady hum. When she finally looked at me again, there was something different there. Not just the guardedness I'd come to recognize, but a kind of quiet warning. My hand was halfway to hers when she said, "You should go now," and I did, but only my body left that room. 3 days passed before I saw her again, long enough to make me wonder if I'd crossed some invisible line that night. She came into the shop just before closing, no jacket this time, like she hadn't planned on staying out long. She didn't bring coffee or a space heater or an excuse, just herself. "I was walking," she said simply, as if that explained everything. I locked the front door behind her. The shop was dim, most of the overhead lights already off, just the desk lamp casting a warm circle between us. She stood on the other side of the counter, her hands resting flat on the wood. I don't know why I keep coming here. The words landed in the quiet like small stones dropped in still water. I leaned against the wall, crossing my arms, more to steady myself than anything else. Maybe you do know. Her gaze flicked up to mine, sharp, then softer, then somewhere in between. This isn't normal. No, I said. It's not. She let out a small breath, almost a laugh, but it caught halfway. We're not doing anything. Not yet. That made her still. The hum of the old fridge in the back room filled the space where her reply should have been. I stepped around the counter, slow, giving her the chance to stop me if she wanted. She didn't move. The distance between us was suddenly a living thing, pressing in on both of us. What are we doing? She asked finally. Her voice was quieter than the hum of the fridge, but it carried. I didn't have an answer, not one that would make this smaller than it was. We just stood there, her with her hands on the counter's edge, me with my weight shifting toward her without realizing it. My eyes kept tracing the curve of her jaw, the faint lines at the corner of her mouth, the way she seemed both grounded and somewhere else entirely. Say something, she said, almost pleading. I think about you more than I should, I admitted. The words came out low, stripped of anything but truth. Her fingers tightened against the counter. She looked at me for what felt like forever, and I saw the flicker of something. Not surprise, but recognition. She didn't say anything, just looked at me, like she was already mourning something we never even had. It was a Tuesday, the kind of day where the sky never really got light. I was under the hood of an old pickup when she appeared in the doorway, holding an envelope. She didn't come all the way in, just stood there, her fingers curled around the paper like it might slip away if she let go. I was cleaning out a drawer, she said. Found something. I wiped my hands on a rag and walked over. She hesitated before handing it to me. The envelope was worn soft at the edges, the flap barely holding. Inside was a photo. A man in his 20s, leaning against a fence, sun in his eyes. Took me a second to realize why he looked familiar. Same jawline, same stubborn set to the mouth. That's your brother? I guessed. She shook her head slowly.
No.
That's someone I loved. A long time ago. I studied the picture again. He could have been me 10 years from now, or me now in a different life. You look like him, she said. Her voice so quiet it almost dissolved into the sound of the rain on the roof. Sometimes when you walk into the room, it's like I forget where I am. Something in her face shifted. Not longing exactly, but a kind of unguarded ache I'd never seen in her before. What happened to him? I asked. Her eyes stayed on the photo. He left. Or maybe I did. Depends who you ask. I wanted to press, but the way she held herself, shoulders tight, chin down, made it clear this was a door she rarely opened. I handed the picture back. She didn't take it right away. Instead, she let it rest between us on the counter, both of our hands close enough to touch. I thought I'd thrown it away, she murmured. Why didn't you? A faint smile touched her lips, the kind that was gone almost before it appeared. Because I'm not as good at letting go as I pretend to be. We stood there, the hum of the shop's heater filling the space between words. I could feel the pull of her, not in the way I had before, but in this deeper, steadier current that felt less like temptation and more like inevitability. She slid the photo back into the envelope, but she didn't tuck it away. Instead, she set it down on the counter beside me, as if leaving it there meant something neither of us was ready to name. She took a breath like she hadn't allowed herself to in years, and for the first time, she looked at me without fear. The storm had been moving in all afternoon, the kind that rattled the metal roof and made the shop smell faintly of ozone. By the time she showed up, the streets were slick and the air felt heavier than it should. She didn't bring anything this time, no envelope, no coffee, no excuse. Just herself, hair damp from the walk over, eyes steady on mine. "I wasn't sure you'd be here," she said. "I'm always here," I told her, though we both knew that wasn't really true. We ended up sitting in the back room, away from the hum of the heater, two mismatched chairs pulled close. The rain tapped hard against the windows, and for a long while, neither of us spoke. I could feel it in the air, that thing between us we'd been circling for weeks. It wasn't urgent anymore. It was just there, like it had been waiting patiently for us to stop pretending. She broke the silence first. "I don't want to hurt you." "You're not," I said. Her mouth curved like she didn't quite believe me. "People always think that at the start." I leaned forward, elbows on my knees. "Then maybe this isn't the start." Her gaze lingered on me, searching for something. I didn't flinch under it. I let her see whatever it was she was looking for. She shifted in her chair, the kind of small move that closes a gap without feeling like it does. I noticed the faint tremor in her fingers where they rested on the armrest. Not fear, more like release. "Do you ever feel like—" She trailed off, exhaling through her nose. "Like some things find you no matter how far you run?" I nodded once. "Yeah." She didn't argue, didn't fill the space after that. We just sat there, the quiet settling over us like the weight of a blanket. At some point, my hand moved. Not planned, not reaching, just resting near hers on the armrest. Her fingers shifted slightly, brushing mine, and she didn't pull away. The rain outside softened, the wind dying down. I could hear the faint ticking of the cooling pipes in the walls. Everything felt slowed, deliberate. When she finally looked at me, there was no hesitation in her face.
No mask.
No warning. She didn't say she loved me, but she let her guard down, and that was louder than any "I love you" ever could be. It's been months since that night in the back room, but I can still feel the weight of it. Not in the way you remember a kiss, or the way someone's hand felt in yours. It's quieter than that. Heavier, too. We never talked about what happened, not in so many words. The next day, she came by like she always did, except the air between us didn't feel crowded anymore. No circling, no pretending we were just two people passing the time. We knew. She still had her guard most of the time, but it wasn't the fortress it used to be. There were cracks now, and she let me see through them. I learned she liked her coffee lukewarm, that she hummed under her breath when she was thinking, that she couldn't stand the sound of ticking clocks. Small things, but when you've wanted to know someone for so long, the small things feel like answers. And I changed too. I stopped treating her like a puzzle I had to solve and started just being there, not to win her over, not to fix anything, but because I wanted to see what she'd share when she decided to, not when I pushed. I think that's what love actually is. Not the rush, not the fireworks, not even the moments you've been waiting for. It's the space you keep open for someone, even when you're not sure they'll ever step into it. She told me once, weeks after, that I didn't remind her of him anymore. "You're not a replacement," she said, almost like she was telling herself. "You're you." And it was the first time I realized she'd been afraid of that, too. Afraid of what it would mean if she let herself care for someone new. Now, when she walks into the shop, she doesn't hover in the doorway like she's deciding whether to stay. She comes in, sets her bag down, and looks for me. And I can't explain why that feels bigger than any "I love you" could. We're not perfect. We're not even certain of where this ends up. But the difference is, we stopped running from it. And in a world where so many people never even get to that point, I think that counts for something. Maybe everything. If you've ever had someone like that, someone you weren't expecting, but couldn't ignore, you know what I mean? So, what would you have done?